The billionaires are afraid of being hoisted on their own petard. They are afraid of having to deal with the repercussions of their actions. And what they've done by building their bunkers and revealing their various space plans is they've exposed the fact that they do not believe that the things they are making are going to save the world. They believe that the things they're making could save them, and that the rest of us are going down.
Welcome to the Repatterning Podcast, where we believe your mind-body system is your domain and that choosing the beliefs, habits, and patterns that best support you is your birthright. I'm your host, Arden Leigh, creator of the Repatterning Project, an 8-week course in learning to free yourself from the patterns of your past and program your mind for your dreams of the future. Join me for these extraordinary conversations as we unpack the keys to creating our reality. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Repatterning Podcast. I am your host, Arden Leigh, and I am so excited to welcome today's guest, Douglas Rushkoff. And I want to tell you a little bit about Doug before we dive into the conversation. Doug is a media theorist and consultant who specializes in the field of the societal and technological patterns that govern us, with an emphasis on reclaiming our humanity and our sovereignty in order to create a more sustainable society. He is the author of the book Team Human, which is how I first heard about his work. And he is also the host of the podcast by the same name. He has also penned other books such as Program or Be Programmed, which has recently been re-released to include sections about the advent of AI in society and how we integrate that in a manner that serves us best. And also Survival of the Richest, Escape Fantasies of the Tech Billionaires. He is also a scholar in residence at Andis Labs, which is a consultancy that centers humans in the development of AI. And I'm also proud to say that he is featured along with me as a guest on Richard Metzger's Magic Show, which is a docu-series that follows the lives and practices of real-life magical practitioners. And if that weren't enough, he is also a graphic novelist. He has put out titles such as Alistair and Adolf and Testament. And he recently shared with me that he has a new graphic novel coming out soon from Dark Horse Comics. It is a Mycopunk Fable titled Post-Humans. Doug, I am so excited to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for agreeing to this conversation.
Thanks for inviting me. It's good to meet you finally.
The pleasure is all mine. I first heard about your work from our mutual friend, Grant Morrison, who gifted me Team Human for my birthday, and I believe around 2019. And I have to share with you, it was so incredibly formative. It was exactly the thing that I needed to read at that time in my own spiritual development. And a lot of the concepts in Team Human ended up making it into the Repatterning Project, which is the course that I teach on choosing our patterns, our beliefs, our mindsets on purpose so that we can generate the life that we love. So I'd love to talk to you about some of the themes that are in that book today.
Cool.
The first thing that really stood out to me in Team Human was the idea that we are being actively, well, sometimes passively programmed by the technology that we use, much in the way you compare it in the book to being in the environment of a casino or a prison. Like there is an agenda in a casino. It is curated. The environment is curated to cause us to make certain choices or enact certain behaviors. And our technology is doing this to us as well, because it has, in a way, its own agenda, the ways that it wants us to behave when we interact with it. Can you share with us a little bit about how that works and how it happens?
Yeah, it's simpler than it looks. It's like you talk to someone who lives in the suburbs or most parts of the country, and they think, oh, well, you got to have a car to get to work. If you have a job, you need a car. It's like, well, why do you need a car to get to work? And most people say, well, because work is far. I can't walk that way and make it there. It's like, yeah, but why is it far? Why is it far? And it's like, it didn't used to be far. Your where you live was zoned by people who were in the thrall of the lobbyists from General Motors who rezoned communities so that people live far away from where they work, so they have to buy a car to get from one place to the other. So you're born into a landscape that has certain things that just seem like given conditions. But if you go back, you go, oh, wait a minute, that's not. Or so in order to have food and money, you need to have a job. Well, since when do people have to have jobs? When were jobs invented? What are jobs? And I know, like, you talk to most people now, like, especially in deep capitalists, and they just think this is like crazy communist radical. It's like, where did jobs start? They started around the 12th century. People used to work, they would trade, they'd be craftspeople. Jobs started after this thing that was invented called the chartered monopoly, which said you're not allowed to be in business for yourself. If you want to make money or you want to make shoes, you got to go work for His Majesty's Royal Shoe Company. So you can't do that. We'll kill you if you do this yourself. It's against the law. You got to be an employee of His Majesty's Royal Shoe Company. So now instead of selling shoes, you sell your time working for the man. And there's the job. And the job is going to be 40 hours a week. And they do all these things to make it look like it's always been this way. Like one of these movies where they rearrange reality at night and you wake up and it's different. So they put the clock up on the tower of the tallest building in the medieval village, as if to say, look, that's time. This is the way time works, and an hour is fair, and that's the judge. But since when it was that? Wait a minute, who said? And what I'm kind of encouraging people to do is to look around at the world and kind of go, since when? Since when is this? Who says this? What rule is this? And why do we accept this rule? And if you question them, not to be crazy revolutionary, but if you question them, you become able to kind of rewrite the codes, the laws, the spells of reality in a way that conforms to how we want it to be now.
Yeah, something I heard from a teacher once that I often repeat to my participants in the repatterning project is the idea that we all drive on the roads according to these yellow and white lines that are painted. And there are these societal agreements. There's a contract that this is the way that we all drive so that we can make sure that we're safe. But if you went to somewhere like Calcutta, for example, and you tried to paint those lines on the roads, like they would just laugh at you, you know? And so it's so important that we begin to question these agreements that we've all made. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to go and drive crazy on the highway, because there are certain
Right.
agreements that are in place to keep us safe. But some of them are not beneficial to the majority of us.
Right. Or you look at the kinds of choices that are made, even in something like that. So you got Calcutta on one extreme where they're just like, just go for it. I mean, I'm sure they have lots of crashes and shit. Whatever. There's probably problems with that too. But maybe it accommodates lots of different kinds of vehicles or people running around or having horses and different stuff. And then all the way on the American side, say in California, you've got lots of traffic lights and big intersections where people sit and wait and follow the rules and all. Then you go somewhere halfway in between, say like Rome, and you're going to have these big traffic circles in the middle of the town. So you think, if you're raised in a society, like we're talking really about sort of the way atmospherics infuse into your way of thinking to create a worldview. If you live in say America with traffic lights, you live in this kind of highly simplified place where there's an authority from the top telling you it's a red light or a green light. And I'll wait here because I'm going to wait. We're all going to look up at that thing. And when yours is green and mine's red, I'll wait and you go. When mine's green and yours is red, you wait and I go. We don't need to interact with each other at all. We're just following the rules, do the thing, super simple. I could be stoned and stare and go. You go to Rome and it's like, oh, so what's this thing? There's two simple rules, right? You give way to someone who's already in the circle and go to the right. That's all you need to know. Go to the right and yield to whoever's already in the circle. So you end up with this giant circle of cars moving around with tiny motions. You build a chaotic system. It works much faster, in terms of getting people where they need to go. It gets you there a lot quicker than waiting. No one's ever going to be sitting at a traffic circle at 1 a.m. for 40 seconds or 3 minutes waiting for a red light to turn green when nobody else is around, right? You're just going to go. But it suggests a
I'm like that on
society.
highway ramps because
I
I'm.
know I hate that.
It's the
But
autism. I have pathological demand avoidance. If you need me to stop even when there's nothing there, I'm sorry. That's a dumb law.
it's
I'm
just
just
dumb.
gonna
But
drive.
anyway, but in that society, then instead of looking up at the lights, we're all looking at each other, at each other's moves, and learning how to coordinate and cooperate and collaborate in this dance that we're doing together. So you end up with a, if you imagine, I'm going to driving is dancing and cooperating and coordinating. What's that going to do to the way I think about the world, with how I learn to cooperate with people in real life, with everything? So that's sort of the essence of what we're talking about in patterning, is you're living in a world that's been patterned by people and institutions before you. And being raised in those patterns then kind of shapes the way you understand agency, autonomy, socializing, collaborating, and life itself.
Yeah, and I love in the book where you talk about the idea of like no one wants a job. I feel like that's been become in the past like decade, especially almost sort of like a meme on the internet where it's like, born to frolic in the moss and forced to work a 9 to 5, that whole thing. But it is like when we think about it, why do we have jobs? What jobs are necessary, especially as we move forward in society toward more and more automation, with AI taking a lot of jobs as well. This idea that we all have to work in order to earn our place in society becomes more and more outdated. What do you think are the patterns and habits that a person could start to have in order to find what their role in society is going to look like as we move more and more toward this future where hopefully more of our work can center around our purpose rather than us having to do these automated tasks that perhaps the robots could take for us?
Yeah. I mean, the one caveat to this whole reduction of labor thing is we're not actually seeing a reduction in labor because of AI. What we're seeing is a downskilling of labor. So you need lots of slaves to get rare earth metals. You need lots of people in China and Pakistan to tag all this data. There's thousands and thousands of people behind AI. We're going to have people building power plants and figuring out new energy sources and digging up more coal and getting more oil. So far, there's lots and lots of jobs, just not jobs that we want to have. The graphic designers are getting pushed out, but they could be more than happy digging the foundations of new nuclear power plants or something like that. And the other caveat is that so far, there may be a truism to this, it seems that the human hand is the very best tool for agriculture, for genuinely soft, non-disruptive, working in the soil, picking the fruit, getting the things. Hands are really good at that. And if we were going to move towards more of a permaculture kind of I mean, I know this is idealistic, but like a vegan permaculture sort of society, you'd need, doing like Rudolf Steiner style biodynamic permaculture farming. There'd be a lot more people out in the fields doing stuff. Not that that's a bad thing either. You talk to some most retired billionaires. What do they do with their retirement? They become organic farmers, right? They start growing. It becomes the leisure. But with that said, the shift I think we need to do is, and it's really interesting because healthy societies, ones that have survived collapses before, have been this way, is what we want is to be optimizing for our leisure and pleasure rather than optimizing for accumulation. You don't need to save a lot of money if you live in a world where people trust you and like you and where we're all with each other. You don't need to have an armory of gold. So where societies go wrong when they become pyramidal usually is these are societies of acquisition and accumulation. I want more and more stuff. I want my gold. I want my, it's back to the Bible, 7 years of feast, 7 years of famine. We're going to store all the grain and actually create a famine by storing all the grain and then enslave people and all and build pyramids. If you're optimizing for leisure, then the fact that if it ever happened that these robots are going to till the field so we can sit back and drink Kool-Aid and fuck, what's the problem with that? We really tried that with Generation X. My generation was about the slacker generation. We were optimized for Slack, for time to just chill and talk about philosophy and weirdness. And I think that's probably what could save us all.
And then my generation came along with the personal brand and everyone having to, make their own marketing hustle online, right? But
Yeah,
that
it's cute.
it reminds me what you just said. One of the things that has struck me and stayed with me the most from all of your work was an excerpt from Survival of the Richest that I believe was posted maybe in The Guardian. And
Mm.
it was the story of how you were called in by a group of billionaires to give a talk, or so they said, on the future of technology. And you got there with, all of your talk prepared. And it turned out they just wanted to ask you, like, hey, when the apocalypse comes, how do we keep our security loyal to us? Should we put them in shock collars?
Mhm.
Oh my goodness. Like what an insane question. That idea that the future, our security in the future as the world evolves is our connections with other people, our connections with other humans, the way that we are loyal to one another, the way that we remain, hopefully well liked because we treat people well. And there are these people who are trying to stave off their anxiety about where the future is going by amassing and accumulating. It's like capitalism can be its own pattern, almost in a sense, its own egregore, its own virus that infects people with, like you said in Team Human, with the idea of wetico, right? The
Yeah.
the disease of needing to take in so much more than you need. What do you think is the sweet spot where we find, how do we find what we need without succumbing to overlearning those patterns of accumulation?
I mean, what I tried to do with that book is sort of at least cure us from that cycle. I think those dudes are lost. I don't know if they'll come back, if there's any amount of, mushrooms or ayahuasca that will retrieve them. Um,
Find
but
out.
yeah, yeah, let's find out. We got to go to Burning Man and track them down and see what they're doing. It's the set and setting that we got to change for those guys, not the chemical itself. But
Oh, big time.
I thought that if I could help people laugh at them to see how ridiculous it is, this notion that you could somehow escape from the externalities of your own work, that it would free people of that. So now we would stop worrying about, well, if those guys can't solve that problem, then we shouldn't try to solve that problem either. Instead, let's look to that not being a problem, right? The problem that they're talking about is that technology and AI and capitalism and all are going to destroy the planet. It's over. That either the society will break down, that climate change will come. I mean, the billionaires are afraid of being hoisted on their own petard. They are afraid of having to deal with the repercussions of their actions. And what they've done by building their bunkers and revealing their various space plans is they've exposed the fact that they do not believe that the things they are making are going to save the world. They believe that the things they're making could save them, and that the rest of us are going down. And they even have a kind of a religion, a form of transhumanism, where they look at you and me as being in the larval stage of humanity. We're like the maggots living on the piece of dung, and they are the ones that are sprouting wings and getting off the planet or going up into cyberspace and uploading to the cloud or becoming an artificial intelligence. And then we only matter, the dung and the worms, as fuel for their escape. But what they don't realize from a spiritual perspective is they've disconnected from the maggots and the dung. That it's those of us who are here composting reality are the ones who are actually playing with the real energy. We're the ones who are actually metabolizing reality here, and they're the ones who are sociopathically disconnecting themselves from the source of life. But I mean, why are they dominating women and raping people and destroying the planet and all? It's because they don't know how to be with you. That It's so hard. Poor things. They,
Yeah. Wealth changes the brain.
well, that's true too. It does. But it does. It does. That's part of it. And again, not to blame them. They're living. If you understood money as well as they do, you understand. Oh, the object of the game is to accumulate as much as you can because it's an interest bearing, debt based instrument. So it's an accumulation game, and you've got to accumulate more than the other players at the poker table, or they're going to beat you.
Yeah. A concept that I really loved in Team Human is the idea that you talk about a figure and ground. And
Mm.
it's where we start off with something that is supposed to be centered, right? Like let's say like our humanity, right? Our humanity versus our technology. Humans are supposed to be the figure. Technology is supposed to be the ground that supports us. And when we start becoming programmed by the technology itself, then the tech becomes the ground and we become the background. And there's a concept that I teach in the Repatterning Project, which I'm sure you're familiar with, called the law of diminishing returns. So
Mm.
that there is a point in everything where that figure and ground switches. Every pattern that we take on initially has some return or some reward for us. Otherwise, we wouldn't continue it. So let's say you have someone who becomes an alcoholic. That first shot that they take is they're like, oh, this makes me feel better. And I'm better at socializing. So let
Uh-huh.
me have more and more, right? So your first shot, your second shot, maybe that's true. You get to your 12th or 13th shot, and you are definitely not going to feel better. And you're definitely not going to be better at socializing. The figure has switched for the ground. The thing that you were using to help you connect with people has now become the thing that you are addicted to that disconnects you from people. And there's always that point. And I tell people, if you learn nothing else, learn to figure out where is the point of diminishing returns in your patterns. At what point has your figure become the ground? I'd love to chat about more examples of that we
Yeah.
can
I
begin
mean,
to
that's
recognize.
interesting. Like for McLuhan, Marshall McLuhan, the media theorist, he would say that flip from figure to ground, when something goes from figure to ground, is is when its function has reversed. So you could say the automobile, when it's figure, the automobile gets us somewhere faster. When the automobile becomes ground, it becomes a traffic jam. Right now, you're stuck. That's basically, you don't want a landscape of cars between you and the place you want to go. You want it to be open. So once that flips, it does become that. I mean, where I was using figure and ground more recently was to sort of distinguish between the figures on the screen and the ground where we actually live. So,
Oh,
and
that's a
this
big one.
gets lefties and progressives upset when I talk like this because they think I'm talking about somehow denying political reality. But bear with me for a second. I'm saying stop looking at the screen. What's on the screen? Trump's on the screen. Jimmy Kimmel's on the screen. Climate change is on the screen. Putin's on. Gaza's on the screen. Bibi Netanyahu's on the screen. And most of those things on the screen are not being portrayed as they're actually happening and are really far away and are inactionable for me to the most, at least directly. Whereas if I could somehow take my head off the screen, I would realize that the figure on the screen is created to distract me from the people on the ground, from the other faces, from who I can help right here, right now. And I'm not saying, oh, just stay in your elitist bubble wherever your people are. Most of us are not in an elitist bubble where our people are anyway. But the extent to which I can make my neighborhood and the neighborhoods around me self-sufficient, less dependent on the government, less addicted to corporate products, more resilient, more sustainable, more psychologically resilient, more social, the less negative impact we're having on all those things on the screen. The more potential MAGA people I could be friends with and engage with in mutual aid, the more I've turned them into democratic socialists, whether they know it or not. Because we're just bringing food and stuff to old people. We're just taking care of young people. We're just tutoring this. We're doing volunteer. They're already in the volunteer fire department. They're already volunteering and sharing socially. So it's just, if you weren't worrying about what's on the screen, you'd be able to attend to conditions on the ground, as Marx would call it, a lot better. And again, it's your point of diminishing returns. Yeah, there's a point at which a half hour of news in the evening to understand kind of what's going on in the world, as best as some corporate-owned network can tell you. Sure, read the paper, but to be there doom scrolling and all, again, diminishing returns. It's just putting you in a state of paralysis where you can't do anything anyway.
And on top of that, as you mentioned, our technology is programmed to keep us continuing to engage. So even if it starts off with that positive intention of, well, I want to stay informed, it's so easy to get hooked by that. I actually recently changed, actually, it was inspired by this month in my container of advanced students. We've decided to study your book, Team Human, because,
Oh,
yeah, it was,
especially
and
for
also,
advanced students, that's an honor.
oh, absolutely. In fact, the container was in some ways inspired by Grant's tutelage of me. We're basing our apprenticeship on the Kabbalic tree of life, which I know, of course, you're also familiar with. And when we were in the Hod sphere, which is about, for anyone who is not familiar, the Kabbalic tree of life is made of these different spheres that each have these different themes to them. And the Hod sphere, as Grant taught it to me, was about information and book learning and studies. So I created, for graduates of the course who have integrated the material, there is an advanced container where every month we study a different topic or, either spiritual or personal growth or something that relates to repatterning in some way. And so I chose Team Human, also knowing that this month that we were going to have this conversation on the podcast. So it also helped me get a refresher of your work as well. But as a result of that, I changed my phone to grayscale so that it wouldn't hook me in as much. Because as you mentioned, the colors, the sounds, the notifications, all of that is designed to hit us in the dopamine. And I have ADHD, so I am very dopamine deficient. I am very aware of my dopamine deficiency and how easily really need like positives. That's why I create music, honestly. I mean, many reasons I create music, but the dopamine of creating music really helps me to feed that in a more healthy way. So yeah, you have inspired me this month to change my phone display. At least to have, the little, with the iPhone, you click the button on the side 3 times and you can switch it to a different display. So I have that. I can change it back
Cool.
easily if I need to see something. But yeah, my
Right.
default now is grayscale. It's a great reminder, even just being like, oh yeah, I don't want to be doom scrolling.
Yeah, no, it's true with all these technologies. I have a friend, Amber Case, has something called the Com Technology Institute. So it's all about looking at the way the technologies we use demand our attention in ways that, in many cases, older technologies didn't. And when your car dashboard doesn't have knobs but has screens that you have to touch and do, it needs more attention than if there's the heating knob. I know where it is. I could drive and move the heating knob, pretty easily. That they're taking the sort of the tactile away, and I don't like it. I mean, not only do I not like it, but all the tests they've done, fighter pilots don't respond as well. They like to have dials. They need, not that we should be optimizing society for fighter pilots, but they're a great example of people whose effectiveness with different interfaces could be measured. So yeah, absolutely. And the grayscale is a great hack, even just desaturating to some extent, so that the phone is not the brightest, most colorful thing in the room, because it really isn't. It's just the most garish. It's the most funded thing in the room. You look at that screen and there's billions of dollars of mind control, of Skinner and Pavlov and Freud and neurolinguistic programming and Milton Erickson and Jay Ogilvy, and everybody is in there, optimizing to just get your attention by any means necessary. And it's like the opposite of mushrooms, right? It's the very opposite.
Yeah, it's narrowing the aperture rather than expanding it because it wants your attention. I'm gonna start thinking of it as like my little capitalism rectangle that just lives in my
It
house.
is though. It is, and your disconnector. And I mean that's why there's such things you can do. If you feel your phone or your computer doing the whatever to you, put your feet on the ground is a really easy one. It's a way of, or stand rather than sit. You know, stand with your feet on the ground. It's your body knows you're safe, you know, because we used to be in monkeys or something. And so you put your feet down. Okay, I'm good. I'm good. Try breathing. I try to breathe a couple of times a day. Just it's nice. I mean, I'm probably breathing a little bit all along, but not, I don't breathe nearly enough. And it's like so good, isn't it? And sometimes I'll even be like, oh, I wish I was high. I wish I could have this. I wish I could do that. But you just stop and like breathe twice. It's like, oh man, that oxygen, it's like the best drug, you know, it really just fills all your stuff.
Yeah, or you can remember the sensation of what it was to be high and call that back, right? I
Oh,
think was that
right.
a Timothy Leary thing where they were talking about can
Yeah,
you recreate that in your brain? Yeah,
it's
remember
pretty
the
easy.
sensation of being high.
Yeah, the same state. But yeah, it's just the simple stuff, which we don't do now in our technological environment. Our feet on the ground and breathe. It's like when you're doom scrolling, you kind of don't breathe. You're kind of stuck. It's a vulnerable place, and not that's the other, and not constructive. We've convinced ourselves that somehow we got to stay on top of this, and you can't look how fast it's coming at us now, and most of it, it's not that it's not real, it's not directly actionable, but it is indirectly actionable. You know, the way that we engage with everything we're doing, the amount of money that you need to earn or not, the amount of energy that you're spending. You know, if you're upset about the Middle East, spend less, buy less oil. You know,
Yeah.
there's you can start by doing less harm, because at least, you know, if you don't understand the issues, which are so hard, at least doing less harm, it sort of makes everything less brittle, and it takes some of the weight off the harm stuff that's going on.
Yeah, it reminds us, of our responsibilities as, citizens of
Yeah.
planet Earth and members of Team Human too. What are
It's
we all
weird.
collectively creating?
It reminds me, I had when I used to live on like Avenue B, and Grant came and visited right after 9/11. He came to New York, and I don't think he stayed with me, but we hung out a bunch, and we were eating at Life Cafe, which used to be on Avenue B and
Yeah.
like 8th Street or something, or
I
10th
lived in
Street.
New York at that same time too, around 9/11.
And
Yep, Life Cafe.
I was asking him, you know, or engaging with him about, you know, what do we do? What's our responsibility as artists and thinkers to the political landscape? You know, that there's all this stuff going on, and, you know, what's our role as activists? And I remember him, this is what, 25 years ago or so, he said, oh, Doug, man, you know, they don't listen to what we say. They don't care what we say anyway. Just do your thing, man. Just do your art. Just do your thing. You don't. And I'm like, yeah, but I've got to worry. I've got the people. We have readers. They want to know, you know, the issues, and what do we tell them? And he's like, don't, you know, just. And he was decidedly, you know, he was vehemently apolitical. You know, and this is a guy, in his upbringing with the nuclear bombs near his house
Oh
and
yeah.
activism and all. So he really, and I always go back to that and wonder. And that's why what I'm sharing with you is sort of the way I found as a guilty activist little Jewish kid raised by communist grandparents who were labor activists in Union Square after the, factory fire. I found a way to kind of sublimate or reconcile the activist with something else, to say, I've shifted from being an agent of change to an agent of care. And that the way I feel like, at least me, with the kind of work I do, can be most effective is in helping people repair socially, establish coherence, and move through the world in a way that We'll prepare them. If they want to be activists, they'll be more coherent activists. If they want to be caregivers, they'll be that. And at least, do my part that way, even if I don't watch the news all the time, if I don't have answers for every issue. I'm here. If AOC or Mamdani or someone tells me, go march, go out, we need you, I'll go. I'll march or do this or, I'll go. But I'm not going to be part of the select who understand all these issues and tell us how to think about them.
Yes. And so I'm so glad you brought that up too, because something that really bums me out these days that I see in a lot of folks, even a lot of really well-intentioned progressive folks, is this idea that if you are not sufficiently dysregulated by whatever global issues are going on, then you must not care and you're a bad person, or, you're not. And if we have a society full of people whose attention is constantly being pulled to different globalized, non-local issues and forced to continually put together a huge global perspective of everything that's going wrong, we're going to have a society of very dysregulated people who know a little bit about everything, but don't specialize. And I really encourage people, find your lane and stick with it. I know what my job is. I'm helping people to reclaim agency over their own patterning and conditioning so that they can step up and find their soul purpose work, their meaningful lane in the world, the place where they're going to pull on a thread in the collective tapestry. And I know that it feels so satisfying to know where my work is in the world.
And it's okay. Activists need shoes. Activists need sandwiches. And, you're not making friggin' plastic on, to hurt babies in Cambodia or whatever. You're not at a munitions factory. You're conscious enough about what you're doing. And that's got to be okay. And the other thing that has to be okay, and this has been the hardest thing for me, is like, even I'm such a mess, but this Friday night, there's an ecstatic dance night in Nyack,
Nice.
right? And you go, and just like 5 hours. And I've gone a couple of times, and it's been life-changing. I mean, I even recalled and processed sexual trauma that I hadn't even remembered until doing. I mean, it's like, it's heavy, no drugs, whatever, just dancing that long with people in an accepting way. The body, all that body keeps score and shit. It really does. Oh my God, does it? But it not only remembers in such a way that as it releases, it shares the memory of what happened with you. It's like a movie is trapped in the body. It's wild. So anyway, but it's great for me and all that, but I'm finding it hard. I'll do it. I'm going to fucking do it. But I'm finding it hard to justify, I'm going to take 5 or 6 hours away from my work. 5 or 6 hours that could be spent helping people, answering email, giving another book blurb, doing another podcast, helping someone doing one of these things. To do that 5 hours feels sinful to me. That's a bad pattern, right?
Yeah.
That's a bad pattern. And so now I'm working on that, so I look at, the ACT UP activists who said, look, we bury our dead in the morning, we march in the afternoon, and we dance at night to remember what we're protesting, what we're marching for. During the AIDS, it's like, yes, you dance at night. And also your dancing at night is it's not just giving you the strength you need to then go do the good work, but I'm starting to believe that the dance, the properly framed mushroom ceremony is actually and actively metabolizing collective stuff. It's not just personal. It's because nothing's personal, duh, right?
And we share a collective nervous system with our mirror neurons too.
Right.
And I think, what you mentioned too, it's so important for us to take care of ourselves and our bodies. So that 5-hour ecstatic dance event, if that helps you to process things and to move trauma through the body and to clear your own channel, you're going to show up as a better self for those emails, for the help that you're giving other people. This is something I've been thinking about.
What if it's just fun though? What if it's just fun? just deep
Well, you're
fun.
challenging my belief limitations. See, I mean, my fun and my passion and my work, I hope will always intersect. But I was thinking about this too, because after K-pop Demon Hunters, I kind of went down like a K-pop hole, like a K-pop K-hole.
It's good.
And I was watching an interview with one of the idols, or maybe it was a self-tape video or something like that. And something that he mentioned was taking time in the morning to prepare for who he needs to be during the day, to be his best self. And I'm starting to think about that too, because of course, this is the inaugural season of this podcast, and I'm taking my work, the Repatterning Project, hopefully to a more public level. And some of the resistance, as our producer Tommy will attest, because I brought her on as producer at the beginning of 2025, and here I am. It's September, and I'm finally there. She is finally, beginning to actually tape. But some of that has been an understanding that I need to do the work to create the patterns and habits and mindsets that allow me to be the best that I can be, to give myself that first and integrate that so I can level up to this next place that I'm taking. So I consider those things to be so deeply useful because we're taking care of ourselves. And if we don't remember what we're doing it for, I know for me, I can get irritable. I can get resentful. I can, I could snap at someone who's, and what, and so for me, finding that use, like, yes, of course, hopefully it is just fun, but I think fun is also nourishing, and we need to nourish ourselves.
And we got to believe that, I have to believe that I'm in a place where me having fun, that I'm connected enough, or I've got to believe I'm connected or aligned enough to know that me having fun is good respiration for the organism. That me, if I am, and I don't even know that I am so much, but if I am on the healthy part of the tree that gets the light from the sun and the water from the rain, and there are these other parts of the tree that are really sick and dying or whatever, that the more that I just lusciously take in the sun, that's sending nutrients to the rest of the tree. If I'm just like, oh, do I deserve this sun? Because there's the rest of the tree doesn't want that. They're like, Doug, soak the fucking sun in and just go and enjoy it, and let us at least see what that looks like, that joy, and send it down, not with all the resentment and pain and worry that you're not that, but send it every little bead of honey joy. Try to get down the phloem or the xylem of the tree down to the sick parts and nourish us. And that's not, it's not spiritual bypass. I've seen spiritual bypassing. I'm sure you do too. I get invited to these conferences that are like business conferences. And then I'm like the friggin' moment of spiritual entertainment to make these folks feel like that they're doing something good, when you're not, so they can go back and just do their rapacious Wedigo capitalism on Monday morning. So when I go, I give them fucking hell. I'm like an intellectual dominatrix going in there, just deconstructing their businesses and trying to. I did a talk where I said the object of the game for this talk for me is to get as many of you to quit your jobs as I can.
Nice. Yeah, and speaking on your metaphor of the tree soaking in the sun, something that I've had to, really hammer home for a lot of people who are, burned out activists who are overstimulated by, by everything that's going on in the world, is the idea that we best serve from a full cup. If our cup is empty, we're not going to be as helpful to people as when we decide, like, no. And also, I feel like you and I are both in some ways thought leaders and examples of a certain way of being that we teach, which I find our worldviews complementary and synergistic, even if we are approaching them from slightly different angles. You with the idea of centering our humanity even as we move forward into the future, and my idea of like, let's reclaim sovereignty and agency over our patterning so that we can have the lives that we love. And I think we owe it in many ways to be examples of the fact that if we choose to live in this way, that we will end up happy. Otherwise, what is the point of adopting a way of being? Or for anyone listening to us, I would want no one to listen to me and follow my advice if it did not end up generating a life that is more meaningful and fulfilling and ultimately happier for me.
I'll tell you this though. Yes, I find that to be true. And I'm trying to do yes and rather than yes but it's really a
I
but.
noted that.
But anyway, and um, I'm finding as I have these heart opening experiences related to joy that I'm in touch with an infinite sadness that I don't know how to what to do about it. I feel like just under the surface of our world is this ocean of tears and grief and just unnecessary pain and trauma and suffering, and
Yeah.
that there's no amount of crying I've tried. I can't cry it. I can't cry it out. It's just there. And I'm trying to understand it not as grief and pain, but as sort of the compassion or something better, something. But I can't touch it yet without just weeping.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I relate to that a great deal too, especially, in my repatterning work as my understanding of patterning and repatterning is growing and becoming more advanced. I've begun to encounter folks that I've worked with, who are, for example, survivors of trafficking,
Mm.
whose psyches have been fragmented in ways, exactly like with NLP, with hypnosis, with ritual abuse. I'm planning on bringing on to the podcast a little later in the season someone who is a clinician, but who also has DID, is plural, because
Mm.
of their experiences in the past. And the more that I'm learning about this kind of patterning and this advanced patterning and repat that's so extraordinarily complex, as a way of coping with the really like the darkest forces in humanity, especially in a time where the biggest, like the zeitgeist right now being the Epstein files, and so much of this coming up. And so I feel that a lot too. And I think for me, that's where I'm really grateful for my music, because I get to put a
Mm.
lot of that grief in there. And then I think there is a degree of acceptance where I'm like, well, I feel this grief and I feel those emotions very deeply. But I know, and that is in some ways why I'm called to this role, because it is the compassion, it is my desire to help make healing and mental health care for even these extreme cases that are really misunderstood in a lot of the mental health industrial complex. I mean, I could go on about that, and I won't
Mm.
in this particular episode, but I feel that deep infinite sadness too. And I guess I'm just grateful for my music being that outlet, because then I get to put that somewhere and then sort of be like, well, I'm doing
Right.
the best that I can. I'm fighting the fight where it's meaningful, and I try to really find joy, because gosh, we need it right now. We need joy so badly.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of why I've also been trying to not focus on the so-called other side, the sort of whatever they are, the MAGA people and the Charlie Kirk
Yeah,
people and all. It's like they're experiencing a different nightmare based on the same grief and trauma.
yeah.
They they just see it. It's a different movie they're watching about, but it's fueled by the same stuff. So, again, so metabolizing this, regulating collectively around this, again, as team human rather than just as individuals, it includes them and it helps them definitely. It's just moving through in a coherent, resilient, compassionate way. They're connected to this thing too.
Oh, absolutely. There's no escaping it. And I love also where you talk in Team Human about it is a strength to be able to view those enemies of humanity, right? Of civil society, with compassion, to be able, rather than saying like, well, screw them or what. And it's so tempting, and I see the most well-meaning people really like demonize, and I get it because it is harmful. But if you look under that at what's causing it, it is pain, it is fear, it is grief, it is, I mean, it's also entitlement, like it's a lot of things. But that's what I think so much of my own work deals about is, can we address those underlying fears and issues with solutions that actually address them? Because this polarization is doing nothing. It's a false promise. We've seen Trump, say like, I run for as a Republican because they're the dumbest people. It can
Yeah.
be manipulated. It's a promise of something that never materializes. And I don't know yet how to help people materialize that, but it's funny because you look at their actual needs and you're like, well, actually, yeah, you do want job security. You do want to make sure that, you have all the means to support your family in the way that you want. You want to raise your kids in a safe environment, right? But maybe it's actually not drag queens who are the threat. If you actually look at the statistics, it's, white Christo nationalists with guns usually, right? If we
Right.
actually look at what the threat is. And I don't know how to, because people don't respond to logic and reason and facts. They respond to their emotions. So I don't
Yeah.
know how to get that across. You could show people statistics all day and they're just going to dig their heels in.
Yeah. I mean, and both of us are members of what would have normally been called like the counterculture, it's a cult and whatever it is that we all do. And, like Grant as one of our role models is certainly a countercultural figure. Grant and Genesis P-Orridge and Robert Anton Wilson and all. And I was friends with Timothy Leary, who was a counterculture legend. And I used, his kind of slogan for the back of this
Find
Team
the
Human book. It
others.
was find the others. And when Timothy used it, he meant once you've had your psychedelic trip, once you've seen what it is, what do you do next? Find the others, right? Find the other people who've had this so that you can make, I am or you, and make plans and collaborate and cooperate. And what I tried to do with Team Human was take that phrase to the next place, to say it's not just about finding the other people who agree with us, but what about find the others? The people that we think of as other, the genuine others, which for many of us would be like red state people or people who want Jimmy Kimmel off the air or whatever they are. Find the other, which means if you really find the other, it doesn't mean you're just looking at the other. You find them, find the human being in the other, commune with that person. However stupid, angry, racist, horrible you think they are, there's a human in there. Find them. It's a lot more challenging, but when you can see them as human, one's range of possible responses broadens.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is an important pattern to have for communication and connection of any kind. Well, I want to wrap up soon because I'm noticing that we're almost coming up to the hour.
Okay, doke.
But one thing I'd love to do is I'd like to bring on our producer Tommy Trenbath, who is an award-winning podcast producer recognized by the state of Iowa for her excellence in podcasting. And I'd like to give her an opportunity to ask a deep cut question.
Yeah. So I won't go too deep since we did mention this earlier, but going into this episode, dug as far as I could into your comics since I'm normally a comic book podcaster. And I was crazy excited to hear about Posthuman's Mycopunk Fable. I had not heard the news in my research so far. So to start, I'd love to just ask a little bit about that book and what to expect from it.
Yeah, I guess they'll announce it any moment.
Are we breaking the news?
I think we may be, because it hasn't been announced. But they made the copy. They made the copy and they made the cover and we picked the logo. So it's me and Michael Oming, who I worked with on my last graphic novel, Alistair and Adolf. Only this one, I kind of wanted to work with him from the beginning on it, rather than just me delivering a script, which is what I mean. Alistair and Adolf was years ago, and I finished the whole script, and like 3 or 4 writers had tragedies happen, or 4 artists had tragedies. Everyone who was assigned to it like had something awful happen, and I thought it's because it was a about Aleister Crowley, that it was cursed somehow. But
Wow.
Michael Oeming took it on and survived. So he's ended up like my artist partner. But I was kind of stuck between two stories. One was about this kind of mushroom future, like I guess a mushroom infused culture of a post-technological future where, because technology's gone, the world becomes enchanted again. It seems pretty obvious. The fairies can't fly around with all this radio signal and shit. So, what would
Light
happen?
pollution.
Yeah, exactly. Light pollution, poor little things. But, the idea that when all that artificial frequency goes down, people become just like you can't see with all the lights on. Your pupils have to grow. So we become able to see subtle things when we have less explicit forms of media all around us. So I had that story. And then there was the story I wanted to do based on those billionaire survivalists. I wanted to do a story about these guys doing a massive dose of a new psychedelic and then maybe changing or maybe not as a result. And I was like, which should we do? And going back and forth and back and forth. And then I found a way to tell both of these stories at the same time, to interweave them into the same thing. So yeah, it's mycopunk. It's a new genre called mycopunk, which is like solar punk or cyberpunk or any punk. It's basically using the logic and style and wisdom of mycelia to inform a genre of science fiction.
Now, I know in recent episodes of Team Human and your appearance on Connor Habib's podcast, like you mentioned a recent mushroom trip and like the idea of an insight junkie, of someone keeps coming back to these substances for more insights. Is that anything informing this particular mushroom-inspired story?
I don't know. I don't think so. I'm pretty sure this got written before that particular trip. But I mean, even if temporality doesn't matter, I mean, in some ways, yes. I mean, the trick is in fiction, theater in particular, but really any story, people are expecting that turn at the end. They're expecting the reversal and recognition that comes with Aristotelian drama. And I guess where this does fit is I've ended up with two interwoven stories. One, the tech bros story, because they're these dudes, has reversal and recognition. The other story of these kind of future mycelial people doesn't need it. You get more of a female orgasm in that story. It's just the connections become more apparent. So it does, I guess it does, the insight junkie, my evolution from insight junkie, from the intellectual, looking for those intellectual hits, which are still dopamine hits when it comes down to it, is evident in this. And I'll be interested to see, maybe my next story, I won't have that at all. This is like a transition of like, okay, if I got both, can I get all the way there? I guess we'll see.
I love that idea as a hypersigil in particular. Like if there's any hypersigil that is needed right now, it is one where a whole bunch of tech billionaires end up doing a bunch of ayahuasca, hopefully in a positive setting. So if I can influence you at all, perhaps, it might be worth a bungee jumping trip somewhere, the way that Grant launched the Invisibles in order to charge it with the intention of all of that absolutely happening. And they can maybe move from that pyramidal complex to the more mycelial one. Grant also calls that the shift from the age of Horus to the age of Mott, right? The pyramid versus the network. So man, that I think is a wonderful intention to end our conversation on today. And thank you so much, Doug, for being here. This has meant so very much to me. After reading Team Human in 2019, incorporating so much of its values into my own work, because it really was the understanding that I needed at that point in my spiritual journey. I just want to recommend to anyone listening, this is a wonderful excellently written book. I absolutely recommend that you check it out. Program or Be Programmed, also a really excellent book. And check out Doug's podcast, Team Human. Doug, is there anything else that you'd like to encourage people to check out from your work?
Oh, just do all that and it's more than enough. Yeah. Just come on over. Here at Team
Come
Human.
over and be part of Team Human. Exactly. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you all for listening, and go forth and repattern. Thank you for listening to the Repatterning Podcast. If you're curious about the Repatterning Project, the 8-week course in mental mastery and creative freedom that inspires these conversations, you can check out more details at therepatterningproject.com. We run a cohort twice a year, or you can download the self-study version of the course and get started today. We also offer a 4-week course on narrative magic and archetype titled Myths and Magic, Changing Your Life Through Story, also twice a year. If you'd like to join our community, the Repatterning Parlor, on Discord, you can sign up for $5 a month at patreon.com/therepatterningpodcast. Thanks to everyone who makes the Repatterning Podcast possible. Firstly, our award-winning producer, Tommy Trembath of the Keymaster Collective network of podcasts. She also produces Transcending Comics, Vision in the Void, and Giant-Sized Violence. Thanks also to animation studio Mortis and Madriax, who created the video for our introduction, as well as to Andrew Means, who composed and produced our theme music. And also thanks to Al Alvarez, who took the photos of yours truly that you see on the cover of each episode if you're watching the video version. And finally, thanks to you, our listeners, who give meaning to this work. Our greatest wish is that whatever you've heard today inspires you to live freely and begin creating your reality from the inside out. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again soon.